Hungry Trilobyte podcast would like to start by acknowledging these fine conventions. SoonerCon. Despite the pandemic, Central Oklahoma's longest-running pop culture convention is back. They will hold their next event in June of 2022. To support them, fans and artists have rallied together on their Kickstarter, which you can visit. The Kickstarter will run through February 2nd. Go to SoonerCon.com for more details. The Hellmouth Convention. The Hellmouth Convention is a celebration of all pop culture, but specifically things like Buffy, Angel, Firefly, and Dr. Horrible. It is held in Los Angeles, California, and the next event is scheduled for June 3rd through 5th, 2022. Proceeds benefit the Los Angeles LGBT Center as well as the Ron Glass Memorial Scholarship Fund. For more information, go to thehellmouth.org.
On tap today, we have Heather Antos. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I have to say, your Twitter feed is one of the highlights of my Twitter experience.
Thank you.
Because I try to get into creativity and I love comics, I love geeky stuff, and your stuff tends to hit all the sweet spots when it comes to somebody who actually wants to make something themselves.
Thank you. Yeah. I try and keep it entertaining and positive.
You're one of the people that I like that you can work well on either side of the pen. You've got your visually artistic side, but you're a great writer, you're an editor, and you extend those services to others, both large companies and individuals. And I just wanted to know how you find that extra rewarding, or is it overwhelming sometimes?
Yes, both. I have what I like to call the gift and the curse of turning every hobby into a job. Which is not a bad thing. But it does make it hard to have. I'm a very creative person and I like a lot of different creative things, and so it makes it really hard to have creativity that's just for decompressing. And so one of the things, because I'm an editor professionally, that is my job, I essentially read and critique story for a living. It makes it really hard to just consume media for fun and turn the brain off. In particular, reading, I used to, as a kid, I would devour books and I would be reading constantly. I was 100% that kid. And now, because my job is reading scripts all day long and comics, I don't really get to just read for fun because it's kind of exhausting. And if I am reading, I'm reading nonfiction memoirs or biographies or things like that aren't about, well, is this narrative, oh, the plot reveal, the twist, blah, 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 blah. How is this character developed, type things, because there's an extent of that in nonfiction, but not to the extent that we see in films and TV and comics and things like that. So
that's really, really interesting, because you hit on 2 points that I was actually thinking when we started talking. One is that people are always saying, don't make a living off of what you love because you'll ruin it. And at the same time, it seems like that's the way we have to go if we're going to do anything, if we're going to have time in our lives for the things we love the most.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely doesn't ruin it. I still love comics and I love reading and I love drawing and working with creators and films and all of that stuff. I just have a different perspective on it now, and for me, where I find my joy now most of all than anything else is the fan experience. And I know how the sausage is made. That might lose some of the glamour to the Hollywood side of things. But we make it so people can enjoy it. We make these things so it reaches others and touches others and connects with them. And so every single time I have a little girl come up to me and tell me how much they love Gwenpool or Dr. Aphra or any of the other characters, that's why I do it. That is so important to me. And still now, years later, I'll have people reach out and just be like, wow, this book really got me through a hard time. And that's why we create. That's why we do this stuff.
Are you in any way trying to make the stories you wanted to read when you were little, or even not so long ago?
I mean, I think I think the biggest thing for me was I wanted to make sure there was more than one girl character and things, like when I was growing up on the playground, I distinctly remember, when we were playing Power Rangers or when we were playing Star Wars or whatever on the playground, like, oh, the guys would get to fight between are they Luke or Vader, but I have to be Princess Leia. That's the only, character I'm allowed to be because there's only one girl and you can only have one girl hang out in the group because there's only one girl character. And the girl character then also didn't get to do much. You just existed to be saved and like that's fine every once in a while, but it gets kind of stagnant and boring. And so yeah, I mean a big part of the stories that I work on and tell is I make sure that like, not just like a boy girl thing, but even boys too. I want to make sure that the boy characters are fully developed, well-rounded characters that are focused on, other things other than just saving the women.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but yeah, like that was a big thing. I think for me when I started my career was I want stuff for like teens to read, to be interested in because there wasn't a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. And especially the teen market has been considered kind of the wasteland of the writing world because they're like, well, it's so hard to get those kids to read, so they tend to throw them anything that they can't sell to somebody else just to see if it sticks, does them a disservice.
It does. And like, look, being a teenager is hard. You are too old to be considered a kid, but you're still too young to be considered an adult. It's a really, really difficult age, and all you want is your own voice. And so really, being able to tell stories that speak to that, to teenagers is super, super important. They're still kids and still want to have fun, but they also want to get their driver's license and have a sense of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's and so I think it's always so funny to me when you have like higher up people in companies be like, well, I just don't know what kids are into these days, and it's like, well, what were you into? Like, it's not we're all human beings. It hasn't changed all that much. They just aren't stressed about like the election yet, or like any of
Mm-hmm.
those less exciting adult responsibilities. But like they're still human beings who are, they want to impress mom and dad. They have crushes and friends, and what I think is always so powerful in telling stories about teenagers or for teenagers is when you are that young still, everything is super high stakes. Everything is the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell some really powerful stories like that. Like, yes, literally the world isn't ending, but like if my crush goes to prom with someone else when I'm 16, oh my God, I'm never getting out of bed ever again. And those are very real stakes. And so there's a lot of power to that, and there's a lot of relatability to that no matter what your age. You don't have to be a teenager to appreciate that or understand that. And that is something I think too a lot of people struggle with is like, I can read stories about 5-year-olds and still relate to that because you know at the end of the day, we just want to be happy, we just want to feel safe, we just want to feel loved. Those are very universal things.
Mm-hmm. Are you by any chance a fan of a show called The Adventures of Pete and Pete?
I think I just missed that
I
show.
thought so. If I pegged your age right, and I may not have, yeah, you were just, and that's why I asked. But it's the neatest thing about it is that it's not a show about kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's a show about the experience of being a kid, to
Mm-hmm.
perpetually live in this world you don't really understand, but has always just been there, and you have to figure your way through it. And all the little weirdness of it is just like, well, this makes sense to them. Why does this make sense to you? That's what kids feel like
Mm-hmm.
constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. They have no autonomy. Everything's confusing. And then they're constantly talked down to by everyone around them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's incredible. No wonder kids have meltdowns and tantrums. Like, I get it.
And when you write a story like yours or any story that appeals right to the kid, it's because you're not talking down to them.
Exactly.
They understand when that happens that they're being treated seriously. Because like you said, everything's serious to them.
Exactly. And like that's rule number one of like, telling a good story is don't assume your audience is stupid. Like just like, well, I'm not gonna assume, you're stupid. I'm not gonna like, well, let me tell you, a story is there are words and there's a beginning and a middle and an end. I assume you know what a story is. I'm not gonna talk down to you. You can't
Right.
you can't do that to your readers either because they know.
They know, and they know what they want. They know what they're looking for, or at least they're going to know when they find it at the very least.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And I mean, you look at the stuff that the suits you talked about that don't know what kids are into these days, the stuff they put together that doesn't work, you can see it why it doesn't work because it feels synthetic. It feels like you went to you went to the store and bought story in a can for $9.99 and tried to spray it on something.
Well, it's the same thing like with news articles, right? They're selling headlines. That's really what they sell headlines. They and look, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? Like there's a method to the madness, but it is unfortunate that, and it's not just comics, right? Like it's stuff that we get with like movies too. Very cheap surface level content that's flashy and bright and will do well for one weekend and then no one will talk about it ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And then people wonder, well, why didn't that work? So,
And it's amazing because we have such great source material. And I'm not just talking about the big name movies. I mean, there are up and coming artists who are making comics that should be movies, that are making movies that should be books. I mean, there's a whole circle of life that's getting ignored because I don't want to say people are afraid to take risks because that seems too simplistic, but am I that far off?
Occam's razor, man. It's, I mean, the most obvious answer is the most likely. Like, look, everything, we're in late stage capitalism and everything is driven by a short, quick, fast buck, right? Like that's it. That's really all it is at the end of the day. And it's, I mean, how many Spider-Man movies have we had, and how many will we continue to have in the last
Mhm.
decade alone? It helps that the later ones are good, but they weren't always, and they still kept making them because people would keep spending money on them, and people, and same, how many Batmans have we had in the last 5 years alone?
Mhm.
It's because it's a quick buck. And that's it. That's all it is. And it's taken, I mean, we see it with a lot of celebrities where, it's taken a lot of like, I would say like guerrilla street level almost type warfare internally and Hollywood and publishing and things like that, where, you know, actors aren't getting to perform in the movies of characters that they are interested, and so they are funding it themselves. Like Reese Witherspoon, I think, is a great example of that, where we wouldn't have gotten like Gone Girl or Big Little Lies or Little Fires Everywhere, like these really character driven, intricate, interesting stories, because she read the book and she was interested and she foot the bill. But your big studios, your big publishers, all they want, well, is an A-lister attached to it, and how much money can we guarantee this will make? And that's it. That's all they care about.
And I get that. I mean, I'm not opposed to making a buck by any stretch, but the reason we get up each day, the reason we go to work, whether we're shuffling coffee and bussing tables, or whether we're actually getting to edit stories and be podcasters, is that we want the experience of being creative. We want the experience of getting out of our lives. And these stories give us a way to do that, but we want more stories.
Exactly.
So I think we do.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, one of the coolest things about living when we live is there are more stories than ever before out right now. Before, just speaking comics alone, just even like 30 decades or 30 decades, 3 decades ago, 4 decades, you had two comic publishers, really. And now there's, instead of like 50 books a month, we're getting 200, 300, 400 different options of comic books a month. And so there is a bit of like overwhelmingness there for a consumer where, you know, we don't know where to look, we don't know where to start, we don't know what to do. And I think that's where, you know, as consumers, we really need to rely on, you know, our retailers, quite frankly, to do their homework and make sure that they can cater to their consumers. Um, and you know, being able to recommend books to their readers, and because they're the gatekeepers in a sense. Publish We're making all the content, but you know, the retailers are the ones who are the ones who put it on the shelves and get it to the readers. And I think that those relationships are very, very important. Same as, you know, your movie theaters, like the movies that they choose to put in their houses are very important, because if they're only putting in Batman and Spider-Man, then of course those are the only movies that people are going to go watch. They're not going to see the little art house film because it's not available to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there's a lot of nuance in getting your content, which is why I think the internet is great and streaming is great and comicsology is great, because then there's less of a gatekeeper for all of us.
And that the gatekeeping is the key. And I think that that's something that we've almost missed now, because the internet is a part of our lives and has been a part of it for so long that we don't know what it was like the moment you first said, I can record something and get it to the entire world within 5 minutes. I can draw a comic and anybody can get it with a push of a button. That power was so amazing when we first had it, and we've kind of stopped trying to use it in different ways, or at least it hasn't been a big conversation for a bit.
Yeah, I think, you know, look, again, there's so much nuance to all of this.
Mhm.
And
I oversimplified, I admit.
oh no, yeah, I mean, how can you not, right? Like this
Mhm.
is such a big topic, but like it's everyone consumes things differently, and everyone's interested into things differently. And like in a way there is still gatekeeping. Algorithms, internet algorithms are your gatekeeper, who's paying to make sure their content is seen first.
Mhm.
Who's shoving ads in your face constantly. You know, all of this is still there. They're still manipulating us to read what they want, buy what they want. And so again, as consumers, you know, it is still, you know, we still have to do work to parse through, is this actually good? Am I actually interested in this? Or am I just being sold the headline or the ad or whatever that keeps getting shoved in front of my face?
Yeah. And I just think that there's a way to, people out there have to realize that they're not limited to just what they're getting from their basic streaming services. And that's why I encourage people to create. If you don't see the story you like, make it on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's you know, it is, we're so capable of creating whatever we want. There's so many tools available to us now. And also I say, like, obviously when the world is not in a pandemic, but you know, go to like I always promote people going to conventions and like meeting creators and seeing different people there, because what a great opportunity to get all sorts of stories and content and art that you would not get elsewhere in any other way. You know, and even just being able to talk and speak to creators that might like help you understand and see their work in a new light that you never have before. Um, which is again really cool. And comics is very special in that, because what other industry can you do something like that?
I could talk to you, and I want to talk to you for a good long time about just the convention experience, because that is truly where I think the rubber meets the road for people like us. But I know that we both have stuff going on, and I don't want to take the rest of your day. So, where can my listeners find all your adventures and get your great advice on the internet?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is at Twitter. You can find me at Heather Antos. It's just my name, Heather Antos. And at my Twitter, it has links to my Instagram, my art Instagram, and my website, and all sorts of things like that. But Twitter is really the best place to find me.
Gotcha. Well, Heather, thank you so much for being here. I would love to have you back at any time.
Thank you. Yeah, anytime.